town hall. I will ask Les to, it's almost amazing, Les, we've been doing this almost a year, I guess, or a little over, to start us off with a blessing.
Thank you, Michael. Let us pray. Lord, we thank you for the opportunity that you've given us to serve this community and their housing needs. Lord, we ask your blessings to be upon those in this company and those that we serve. Lord, we pray for the first responders, those that are community builders, and those that just need that care that comes only from you. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Les. I appreciate it. I think that always starts these off in the right way, and I appreciate you doing that for us. Gratitudes. The chat box is open if you want to share your gratitudes. I think if you do, you get points under the Build Your Sale contest that John Brewer is going to talk about in a minute. So you always, when Michael Fox says love this market, I'm not sure that's true or not. There's certainly aspects of it, and we do have things to be grateful for. COVID-19 numbers trending down, absolutely. The weather, absolutely. For me, all of my spring trip, of course, all my fall trips, but all of my spring trips, except for one for work, were canceled, which might not normally be something I was grateful for, but I took that non-travel time and coached under 12 soccer this spring. That Vito is the goalkeeper for our Mount Pleasant Cosmos. We finished our last game on a great tournament hosted by James Island on Sunday, and actually got a little choked up as I told the boys how proud I was of them, and you could see the real improvement and the understanding of the game that they were doing in the last game, and it was certainly gratifying, but I was surprised to see myself be a little emotional as we left the last time from that field talking to them, and I'm actually looking forward to next season. So sometimes COVID or unintended things can give you little gifts, and I probably wouldn't have taken on the time commitment to do that before, but I'm great to have an opportunity to have done it. There's Stormy from the downtown office, grateful to be working for such a wonderful company. Not reading that to be self-congratulating to us. We actually owe our thanks to Stormy because last Friday was her 20th anniversary with Carolina One. I told her I wasn't sure if I was supposed to congratulate her or parole her, but we appreciate all that she has given to the agents in the downtown office and to all her coworkers. Last one, Robin, I'm not sure which office you're in because it doesn't have a last name there, but says, grateful for my broker who met me where I needed to be this morning and prayed with me. We are so blessed to be part of the Carolina family that I can share our faith openly. So Robin, I think that's a great one as well. And again, probably nothing to do with business, but this is a lot more than just business. All right, I'm going to move on into our announcement section and have John Brewer share a few things with us about the Build Your Sale activity contest, which is really going well, but always looking to get more and more people included, because if you do these things during the contest, you're more likely to continue them during the rest of your year, and that's when you'll really see the big payoff. So John, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Michael. Good morning, everybody. It's great to see you on our town hall. Certainly excited for our panel today and opportunity we have to learn from one another. Just wanted to talk real briefly about our spring contest. And we talked a little bit about this on Java with Johns on Monday and want to circle back with that. Of course, I think we're off to a good start. We have a little north of 200 folks that are participating and filling out their scorecards either daily or weekly. We'd love to see that number increase. So if you're on the call today and you've not yet jumped into the contest, please consider doing so. Obviously, we've
got 246 on the call, John. So That would be all of the over 200 we have, and then maybe 20 or 30 we don't, because I'm sure they all are, or if they're not, they will be by the end of the day.
Yes, yes. Jump on in. Obviously, we have we do it partially for the competition. Some of you like competition more than others, but we do this certainly for a little friendly competition. We have some great prizes. That's always good as well. But as we talked about with Java with Johns on Monday, the biggest reason we do these types of activities is because we know that the single greatest source of motivation that any of us can really experience comes from progress. And the only way that you and I can know if we're making progress is if we're really focusing on monitoring, measuring our daily activities. And so this whole Build the Sale contest is really focused on getting you to the place where you, on a daily basis and compiled into a weekly basis, are just kind of tracking those activities that you do each day. And we want to track them because it really gives you a sense of the progress you're making. I'm pretty convinced that there's 600 people in our company doing the daily activities to some extent. Where you will really begin to see some momentum and motivation is if you commit to tracking those on a regular basis. So the contest just provides you a way each day to kind of make a check mark on what you're doing. And as John Gracillo would say, it's putting some wind behind your sails, or even creating a little luck for you. So if you haven't started tracking and inputting that data, please do so. Not just for us, it does motivate us, it encourages us, but I think for you, and as Michael said, the results of this you see ongoing throughout the summer months into the fall. And so our plea for you is just jump in to the contest. We know that our success is always a product of the little decisions we make every day, compounded over time. And recording those activities every day give you a way to monitor your progress, build some momentum, increase your motivation, and I'll throw one more M in there, ultimately make some more money. So jump into the contest. We'd love to have you part of it. And I think you'll be glad that you did. So Michael, that's all I'll have to say about that. Appreciate you letting me talk a little bit about our contest. Saw some good comments coming in on folks from Katie. Love our contest. Always see a boost in her business from it. So be like Katie. If you need a boost, jump into the contest. I think you'll be glad you did. Thanks, Michael.
No, I appreciate it, John, very much. And I think your point's certainly well made. It's kind of like, losing weight for the summer. It's great to lose weight before you head out to the beach for the summer, but imagine the long-term benefits to your health if we could all do that, and the benefits you reap for your entire life, not just for that, vacation you're losing the weight for. And so it's a short-term focus point, but the benefits and the activities are there for the long term. And that's really when it does pay off. It's no surprise that you see dramatic changes and growth in the business of those that participate in doing those activities. And nothing in there is horrible or bad or uncomfortable or not consistently with, serving those who want the information, and B, already know, like, and trust you. So not too painful. And I encourage everyone, as the last comment came in, make the roller coaster ride less steep. Absolutely. Nothing we'd like better than to smooth out the average career of a real estate agent from a roller coaster to a nice smooth country road. Just driving down the road at a high level, at altitude, but a nice smooth country road. Alex Tragus in our Long Point Road office is the chairperson. I gotta figure out, update my language, of our company March of Dimes campaign, which is in full swing and has a few weeks left in it. And I wanted Alex to share a few things with you this morning. That I'm going to talk a little bit about the market, nothing you don't really know, just a couple of quick highlights and manners in which we look at, and then we'll get to our agent panel. So Alex, I want to turn it over to you for a minute.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, guys. Good to see everybody virtually. So as Michael said, we are right in the middle of our March of Dimes efforts. So thank you very much. We have a lot of offices that are doing a lot of great fundraising. And we have some offices that need to get started. So I'll be reaching out to you guys. Our goal for all of Carolina One is $20,000, which we feel is very feasible. Right now, we have a total of $8,282. So we're a little under halfway there. The march itself will happen on May 14th at 1 p.m. and it will be virtual. It'll be kind of like our trade show, actually, where you're going to log in through a URL and there'll be a presentation and little vendors, people you can talk to. And then at a certain time, they're going to say, okay, everyone, go out and walk. And so you can go out and walk at that time, wherever you are at that time. Right now, our top office is the West Islands office. Thank you so much, Oliver Matthews. You do a great job. Charleston Central, that's Millie Martin. You're doing awesome as well. Long Point Road is number 3. That's my office. Corporate, Salt Point, you guys are doing well. We've already had to increase your goals, so thank you. And Mount Pleasant North, you guys are our 5th office so far. So we are doing quite well there. The top individual fundraisers, number 1, Oliver Matthews. He is always doing great for this cause. Number 2 is Michael Scarfell. Thank you. Number 3, Paul Lynch out of the Long Point Road office with me. Babette Fisher, who's out of our Mount Pleasant North office, of course. Thank you, Babette. And Tim Walter is number 5 on our top fundraisers. So thank you to all those people that I mentioned and to everybody I didn't mention that is donating. If you need help, just reach out to me. I'm happy to help. Every office has their own URL where they can donate. And we are kind of, making it fun between offices to try and be the top giver. So anything you need, just let me know, and we need to keep on going. So we'll probably go through mid-June. So I'll give a final date when we have that picked out, but we'll go a little bit past the walk itself.
That's great. Thank you, Alex, for sharing that. It is a great cause. We have people in every office and in all of our lives that have been impacted by these issues associated with pregnancy and premature birth. The great news is we have such great care here and such great resources. And a lot of that is due to the fundraising and research and development spearheaded by the March of Dimes. So it's a great cause. I will, John Brewer, you've got a baseline of everybody that filled out the Build Your Sale activity contest, which again, you're getting the emails from John Grisilla. It's an online form, so it couldn't be easier. Okay, we've got the baseline of what we did last week. For every new person who fills it out who didn't fill it out before, Julie and I will donate $10 to the March of Dimes. So if you guys are on the call and you've not done it and you want to participate this week and fill it out, it's a great reason. Of course, I really would like you to do it for the rest of the contest and participate. But once you do it once, you realize it's really not that hard. It's a great online, easy form. John's going to email it to you on an ongoing basis so you can fill it out and we'll raise some money for a good cause as well. I don't have in my calendar exactly when our last town hall was. I know it was a couple of weeks ago, but Alex reminded me when she talked about probably our 4th place fundraiser that I'm not sure if I've had a town hall since Babette Fisher was named the CTAR Realtor of the Year. And I want to extend our congratulations to Babette. I did put that on the Facebook page. So I think you guys would have seen it there, and I'm sure most of you heard about it. Babette is the immediate past president of CTAR and did a great job during a very difficult year. And just so you're sure, you guys don't think that just because she was CTAR president, she became Realtor of the Year. I think it was the extraordinary efforts that she led during all of the trouble and turmoil that we had during what was 2020. This certainly earned her that honor. So congratulations to her. I don't think I recognized at the last town hall, and even if I did, why not mention it twice? So congratulations, Babette. I saw she had a comment about her March Times, so I think she's on the call as well, even though I can't see her on my screen. So congratulations, Babette. Last on the announcement side, what everybody wants to spend their time in the morning talking about, COVID protocols. So just a quick kind of heads up as to where we're headed as a company. Glad to see numbers down, glad to see positivity rates down, but also recognizing that there are aspects of this that will be with us for a long time. So we're going to take kind of a phased approach as we change a few things up and also eventually probably settle into what is going to be a new normal, certainly not necessarily a return to normal or do anything rash or quick on that standpoint. What we are going to do effective May 1 is get rid of the thermometers at the front desk. So if you had been taking your temperature, no real reason to do that. As kind of our first phase back, we're going to leave the sign-up sheets in there for now. We're probably tracking for a optional mask environment beginning probably about July 1. Again, this is data dependent, and this will be based on the fact that hopefully by then, and hopefully actually by sometime between now and June 1, everybody who wants a vaccine appointment will be able to get one. And that'll give you enough time during the month of May to get a vaccine appointment scheduled, to have some time, get your second shot scheduled, and have some time for all of those antibodies to build up in your system before we change our current mask policy. Again, we put that policy into place coming up on a year ago because it's important for us to do whatever we can to protect ourselves and to protect others. However, as the vaccine becomes readily available and we've got a chance to protect ourselves at least 90% or so, then we'll be able to relax some of those restrictions. At the same point, we're not going back to the new normal and want to make sure, or go back to where we were before, and want to make sure that we're respecting everybody's individual wishes. Some people, may decide not to get vaccinated. Some people may still wear a mask for protection. Some may wear it seasonally. Some may wear it out of an abundance of caution. And we're going to respect all of the individual decisions that people make, and also make sure that we give people, a reasonable amount of space. Like I said, that's part of the new normal. But I don't see everybody being required to wear masks in common areas ongoing. And if the data and numbers bear that out, then hopefully we'll shoot for a July 1 target there. We will put out some new guidelines and everything else. Shirley Phillips says, have we turned anyone away with a temperature? Actually, I'm not sure we have. I think that was one of the outward potential measurable signs in the beginning, but not sure that's doing a lot. It is certainly anything effective right now, which is why we're going to discontinue the temperature taking as of May 1. For now, we're still going to have the sign-in sheet so that we can still do our contact tracing and notification, but that may be an interim step between now and July 1, and then probably go to an optional mask policy. Again, data dependent, situation on the ground. We always reserve the right to see what's going on in our community and what's going on in our offices to make that decision. I know firsthand we had someone at Salt Point that tested positive a couple weeks ago, and unlike 6 or 9 months ago, where it may have caused more hand-wringing or consternation, I think the person next to them said, well, I've already had it. And the person across from them said, well, I'm already vaccinated. And so they went home and it wasn't a tremendous issue or a tremendous point of upset. So I think hopefully that's probably where we'll settle in. But Shirley, I'm not aware. I'm thinking if you have a temperature, you probably know it before you've walked into the office, or hopefully you stay home. Last thing I want to say on that is, I do though want to encourage people to, just take care of each other, even if it's non-COVID related. I think one of the most interesting things that I heard in the beginning when the kids went back to school on a Zoom meeting, they went in person, was that the school said they were getting rid of their perfect attendance award. And they said at the end of the day, all we were doing was encouraging you to send your kids to school sick. You know, if you've made it through 9 months or 6 years of perfect attendance and you're not feeling good, you're probably not going to stay home out of a consideration of someone else. You're going to go to school so you can get that award, and that's probably not the best decision. And so whether it's our employees or our agents, sick days or not, you know, we really want to encourage people to, you know, not only take care of themselves, but take care of others. And, you know, obviously stay home if you're not feeling well, whether it's COVID related or not. I think it just makes sense. So anyhow, you know, Master says, you know, in the comments, he's experiencing older people from his sphere asking if he's been vaccinated. People being cautious. Absolutely. And that makes sense. And that may be something, you know, I did have one work trip and the first thing the Uber driver said was, FYI, I've been vaccinated. You know, if you're working with clients, that may be something that they're interested in hearing about. All right, well, our crowd's building. We've got almost 300, which means everybody wants to come for the second 45 minutes of the meeting so they can hear the panel and not hear me. And so I'll talk real quick about a couple of market stats that you guys know, that you guys are getting on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis, depending on the level of in-depthness, from Dave Sansom, so that you can then use those to be the expert with your sphere. And you guys are seeing those. But a couple of quick highlights from some of the recent information that Dave sent out. First quarter written sales were up 18%. So I don't think that's a shocker to anybody. Closed sales were up 27%, 51% in closed volume. And the median sales price was up 15% for the first quarter over the first quarter last year. So it kind of gives you a little bit of a snapshot. Obviously, we're seeing increased activity. 18% a big jump in the market. But I think it's also important. It's not up 100%. It's not up 75%. So while we see a lot of frenzy around new listings, you know, 18% is not crazy. And we will see, obviously, things slow down a little bit as inventory remains tight. Remember the noise that we're expecting to see in the market. You know, last week, properties pending contracts were up 65% to the prior year's week. You know, up 65% is kind of crazy. You're going to see some headlines that are kind of crazy. Just remember what those are being compared to. Those are being compared to shutdown weeks a year ago. And then we're going to run into May and June where we're going to see sales are down 50%. And those are related to weeks when we came out of the shutdown and there was a lot of pent up demand. So be careful about paying any too much attention to any year over year comparisons. You know, look at where those things were the prior year. So Dave's doing that for you in his stats. 65% over 2020 in the same week, but 19% over that week in 2019. And that 19% gives a better indication of where the market is when we're not really comparing it to that prior week last year in April. Inventory continues to obviously be a problem. We're under 1,400 listings. And that's probably, I think, the lowest number we've seen since 2000. And there were a lot less houses in our marketplace 20 years ago in 2000. So comparing active inventory today to active inventory in 2000 isn't really even a great comparison. So 1,400 is certainly low. However, new listings taken are up 6% versus March of last year. So even though we have record low inventory, new listings are being taken. They're just selling really fast, which is why our inventory is not growing. So new listings are coming on the market, and staying on top of what's coming on the market or staying on top of them before they hit the market, as you all have done such an incredible job, really, really does matter. And that's where InstaList and those things are going to play huge roles in, you know, what's going on. We've talked about those numbers before, but, you know, for the month of through the first quarter and for the months and for the month of March, sorry, I lost one of my pages I needed. Closed sales for MLS were up 29% during the month of March and up 27% year to date on closed sales, while you all, Carolina One agents, were up 38% for the month of March and up 36% year to date. So growing at almost twice the rate of MLS. And also when we look at written sales, you all were up 37% in the month of March compared to 28% for the market. And while the market's up 18% year to date, you all are up 28%. And again, that's not because we're big, that the fact that we have a large number of agents, actually we have about 14% of the agents and about 20% of the sales. So you already have to punch above your weight to keep up with the growth of the market. But the benefit of 1 + 1 = 3, the synergy that you all are able to create inside your offices and with your fellow agents really is what results in you all outperforming the market dramatically and better serving your clients. And so it's one of the reasons why we've added a lot of new good agents this year and people that have been attracted to you guys and the culture you've built in your offices, but also something that we continue to see as we move forward in the market and as we deal with the inventory market we have one at a time. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get to our panel discussion, which is what you all are here to hear. And I'm going to introduce our panelists. I think I gave them one of the sample questions so they can introduce themselves, but we're going to skip over that. And I'll introduce them and save a little time. So first off, the panelist that couldn't be with us was going to be Jen Stevens, who works with the Chris Vasello Group in Charleston Central. And Jen was going to be with us on the panel, but couldn't and sent me an email, which I thought actually served as the best introduction to this discussion that I could give. She said, "I'm extremely honored for this opportunity. However, I'm actually not going to be able to attend. A house just came on the market today and is allowing showing starting at 8 a.m. I've written 4 offers for this client and can't miss out on the opportunity to be the first one in the door this morning. This is exactly how we win in this market. It takes putting aside your own interests and opportunities to help the buyer be the first one in. I'll have an offer prepped ahead of time so we can submit from my car immediately after the showing if they want to." So I completely respect her inability to be here, but we do have 4 other great agents with us as well. We've got Yasser Perez out of the Cane Bay Nexton office, who is on the phone. We've got Haley Kisslinger from the Metro North office, Peter Cooten from our West Islands office, and Lauren Zorilla from our Long Point Road office. So I want to thank each of you for your willingness to lead this discussion and share with your fellow agents. We've got some fans in the chat box. Go Peter, go Yasser. I'm sure Haley and Lauren will get some goes in there coming up soon in the chat box, so don't worry. But I want to start off, and Haley, I'm going to start with you because I did send it out in an email. We all know what's going on in the marketplace, at least in certain price points in certain areas. I was a bit offended by a friend of mine who had the audacity to say, "Oh, it must be a really great, easy time to be in real estate." And I had to probably dampen the mood and let him know he has no idea how hard our agents are working right now on the list side and the buyer side. I spoke to several listing agents this weekend trying to navigate multiple offer situations, escalation clauses that maybe build on themselves, highest and best situations, both on the seller side and on the buyer side, having to write multiple offers to get something accepted. So it's ironic that while we're happy to obviously and very blessed, given the impact that COVID's had on many industries, to have a busy market, no question, you guys are having to work harder now than ever. But Haley, let's start at the beginning with you and your clients on the buyer side. And obviously, the listing side's relevant, but we are focusing on winning the deal on the low inventory offer, in low inventory world with multiple offers. So a little more focus on the buyer side. What conversations do you have with your buyers on the front end? How are you setting up what they might experience in this market? And how has that changed what you would normally do as a buyer's agent so that your buyers kind of know what they're getting into when they start the process, and maybe even before you guys head out and see a house?
So one of the biggest things that I've found is key to getting buyers not to kind of give up is to set that expectation for them. You want to sit down, you want to explain to them that the market is hot, it's a great time to buy, but it's going to be a little bit different than probably what they're going to imagine. I let them know that it's almost certain that they will end up in a multiple offer, and that could vary depending on your price point. But the vast majority of my buyers end up with multiple offers. So one thing that I tell them is it's key for them to combine a list, if there's another decision maker, of everything that is absolutely a must have and a deal breaker. And because of the limited time these houses are on the market, I explained to them that number one, it's important to not just see a house that doesn't fit your needs, but to prioritize the homes that you know are going to work for you. And I know, as you were talking about before on the email, preparing an offer in advance. So I go over all of these things with my buyer. Let's be clear, concise on what you want. We have to be flexible. So you can't wait till tomorrow or Thursday to see the house. You have to see it today. And if you can't go, I can video tour it for you. So I go through all of these with them. So they go in with the expectation that's going to be a challenge. I let them know not to set their heart on a house until they have that ratified contract in their hand. And I've noticed that that's taking a lot of stress, and it's really made my buyers, have a lot of trust in me, because if you go in and you don't tell them that, I see so many buyers that are, my agent didn't tell me, and they lose trust in you. And it's not your fault, but if they don't have that expectation going in that it's going to be a bumpy ride, they get frustrated, and, sometimes they might even walk away. So.
Sorry. I think that's key. I think that's key. And you're absolutely right. I mean, we're managing to achieve their goals, but we're also managing their relationship with you. And we have seen buyers both give up and blame agents, and agents end up losing clients, not for things that were their fault, but it is managing both sides of that relationship. Peter, anything different that you do to prepare your clients up front or before you're headed out to even see that house that they then fall in love with?
Hey, yeah, yeah. Good morning. I definitely agree with what Haley said. Setting expectations in the beginning. I like to keep it very simple, pretty basic. I do a buyer consultation. A lot of times that's a Zoom invite, and basically bring up the two most important things that factor into buying a home. Why are they buying? What's their motivation? And then obviously financing, making sure that I'm getting them pre-approved if they haven't already talked to a lender. And then, more than likely we're going to end up in a multiple offer situation, and letting them know that, that's the way the market is, so that they don't think, it's my fault. Because that definitely never feels good. And then I have a step-by-step plan. Take them through the offer process from contract to closing to get them, as comfortable as they can possibly get. And then, like the agent who can't be with us today, putting myself aside, and pretty much always being available is huge for me.
Yeah, I think I think some people have realized, it's always been the case that might surprise some of you guys. There are 7,000 realtors in our market, and about half of them will sell less than one house a year. So there's always been a segment of our market that didn't have interest, which is perfectly fine. There's different goals for different people in building a full-time real estate career. But there is no doubt that in this market, Peter, you're absolutely right. You can't do this part-time. And you can't do this right now when it's convenient, because that house is going to be gone. Like Haley said the same thing. If you can't go see it today, then I'll go see it and I'll put you on video. But saying, oh, it works better for me tomorrow afternoon after work is going to be very difficult, and certainly not realistic in this world. Yasser, anything different you're doing on the front end with your buyers? And if not, and just so Danielle or Lauren, can kind of be ready, since she's getting the tail end of this question, we're going to shift to how do you set up that conversation on the front end, or what conversations are you having with the listing agent, again, to prepare what you might be able to do on the front end before you even get into multiple offers. So Yasser, anything you're doing with the buyer side or with the list side?
Yes, sir. Michael, good morning, and thank you for having me. That's actually a great question. The number one thing I'm doing right now is really calling the listing agent and figuring out what dates are important to the seller, whether it's the closing date. A lot of times right now, sellers have a property they need to find as well, and not the highest offer is always going to be the best offer if they have a closing date they need to meet, or would like to have it a closing date extended in order to meet their new construction date or the new property they need to find in the meantime. Letting the seller know that, hey, my buyer is flexible with moving the closing date. God forbid you don't find a house in the time needed. But really just having that conversation with the agent, trying to figure out what's really important to the seller, whether it's the closing date, the actual next, but then at the end of the day, just picking up the phone and calling the agent will really tell you a lot about that seller and where they need to be at in 30, 60, or 90 days.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, sometimes buyers assume cash quick closing is what a seller wants, but we really need to have those conversations. Peter said it, you know, maybe he stole it from the Simon Sinek book, but he's going to start with why. You know, why are you buying this house? And the more you can find out about the seller, why are you selling, and what terms are most important to you, the better obviously you can craft. And we're gonna shift in just a second. And we'll start and we'll focus, and we can kind of go in reverse order as well. And we'll focus on terms, maybe some terms you hadn't thought about, or some creative ways offers are presented. But Lauren, anything you're doing on the front end with buyers, or on the front end with listing agents, or on the front end with the home itself to set you up kind of with a running start before you get through that showing into the multiple offer contract stage?
Yeah, pretty much. And thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, so I do the same thing that these other agents are doing. But in the buyer consult, I really focus in on making sure that the buyer knows their numbers and what they're comfortable with, because when they get in that multiple offer situation and the pressure is on and the emotions are high, they really need to understand what they're comfortable with. And I explain that every house might have a different comfort level as well. One house, they may be able to go to the top of their budget, but another house they may not want to. And if they don't want to and they don't get it, that's okay. I also just explain that most likely they will lose a house or two, so that just piggybacking on what everyone else said, that so that they're not disappointed in the agent, that their expectations are set. And so, not to rehash what everybody said, but I just think it's setting the expectations up front.
And I'll start with you for the next round, so you don't have to rehash anything. Michael Fox had a good comment. Obviously, one way to help set expectations is to use examples so they're ready up front. Examples of agents offering thousands over list price and still losing out. Yes. And I think when we combine those things with what Peter said, which is starting with the why, you're going to have a lot more success. Remember in the downturn, when prices were falling and sellers didn't necessarily want to sell for what the market may have been at. And again, it's the same thing of focusing on that why. I remember an agent talking about a seller that was relocating to Florida to do the grandchild, but wasn't happy with, 175 offer when the house was worth 180. And the question is, given the market where it is that $5,000 enough to delay your move to Florida to be with your grandchild for several months, if that's how long it takes us to get that higher number? $10,000 extra in purchase price at 3.75% is $50 a month. So if your why is to get in this school district, or your why is to be closer to here, or your why is to cut your commute by 30 minutes each way so you can spend an hour more at home, that might be worth $50 a month. But if you don't know on the why, then it just looks like you're overpaying. And remember, I put out that memo, is it okay to overpay for a house? And it talks about maybe paying today's price or tomorrow's price today, or looking at cost versus price in a couple of those things. Bobette Fisher also said, have a conversation with the listing agent. By all means, please call the listing agent personally to present the offer. I can't tell you how many just email the offer and don't call to present it. And yes, I'm even inside this company. Personally presenting, give the listing agent the perspective of your professionalism. Agent relationships are a huge plus. It's absolutely true. Anna Cusick says, please don't send over an offer without the listing agent know that it's coming. You'd hate for it to be missed. And that stuff happens. We all lose things in email and text and other things, and we assume somebody's ignoring us or not when it may have just gotten missed. And so having those phone calls, making sure you're answering that call, and having those discussions is really critically important. Lauren, I'm going to start with you. Let's shift a little bit to how you're structuring your offer in this market. Are there some things that you're focusing on over others? Terms, flexibility, escalation clauses. Let's cover some of those things. But Lauren, why don't you talk about some of the things you're focusing on term-wise with your clients?
So when I write an offer, I think it goes back to how much that buyer wants it. And if they tell me that it's a house that they absolutely don't want to miss and they don't want to lose out on, I've already gone over in the buyer consult what they have to do to get it. So I may do an as is. I explain that, just because you might put in an escalation clause and your offer may be the highest dollar amount, there might be something else that's important, and that it's the whole package. It's not just the price. Like everybody has said, settlement, when can you settle? Do you need a rent back? And I think that one big thing is that every seller is different, and sellers don't know what they're doing until the offers are in front of them. And so, I do talk with the agent and see what that seller's doing and see if I can maybe understand their motivation for selling, because I think that helps us tweak our offer. But ultimately, a CL 100 and an as-is property is probably one of the things that I will write into the offer.
And Yasser, I'm going to go to you next on terms that you're focusing on. Also want to encourage everybody, if you have questions that you'd like me to present to the panel, and we're going to cover some terms, appraisal, earnest money, sellers who need to find a home and things like that. But if you've got questions, put them in the chat box and I'll work them into the agent panel discussion, because obviously my goal is to have you all get the questions you all have answered, maybe not something that I may not have thought about. So Yasser, on the term side, what are you focusing on different now that maybe you didn't before?
Right now, some of the things I'm doing is a shorter inspection period. Also, things like the exclusion clause, escalation clause that I'm putting in there to try to save my buyer a couple $1,000s in today's market, which shows them the value that we have as a real estate agent when they say, "Hey, I'm willing to offer $250," but you end up getting it for them for $247. With that ultimately being said, I always leave it up to the buyer on what kind of offer price they want to put, because ultimately they're the ones that have to feel comfortable with it. So what I always tell them is put an offer that you feel comfortable with, that if you win it, you feel like you didn't overpay for the property, but also that if you lose out on it, you don't feel like, hey, I would have been okay bringing an extra $1,000 and getting the property, because at that point it's too late. So ultimately you leave the ball in their hands. So whatever decision they make, even though you're giving them an educated decision, it's completely up to them and they feel comfortable with that decision moving forward. But I have felt that escalation clause has won me a couple offers in the past month or two, and it has also saved my buyers a couple $1,000s, which in turn shows their value and that we're not, hey, just chasing a check, but we're actually trying to get them the best deal in today's market.
Absolutely. I think, and we've had this conversation before, whether it's on the listing side or the buyer side, if your client, your seller, or your buyer client ever feels like you're just there to get in and out and get the check, that, the market's hot, so I don't need to really market your property on the listing side. I don't need to worry about the photos. I don't need to really do all the stuff that I would do in a normal market. They're not going to see your value. And you have a chance in this market to show more value as opposed to just driving somebody around for stuff they send you. And that's where Insalist and finding things and presenting things that are not yet on the market, even if it may not be the perfect fit, really shows what you're doing above and beyond versus just what somebody can find online on their own. Chris Haviland had in the comment, be careful about using as is on the specific check mark with the contract, because obviously in those three choices, as is would not give you the ability to terminate. So again, as long as you're comfortable with the age condition, I know some people are inspecting on the front end, that can give you a comfort level. You can honestly also consider, repair procedure or due diligence and say, my seller is not going to be asking, my buyer may not be asking for repairs or something along those lines, where you still might, preserve a termination right. If you need that, if you, end up finding something that's really wrong. But I have heard about people, inspecting on the front end. Peter, terms that you're focusing on, or that might be a little bit different than a traditional market.
Yeah, I like what you just said. I mean, if I know that the seller doesn't want to do any repairs, I may try to do a due diligence offer and write in the contract that the property is to be sold as is. If it looks like that's not going to work, definitely repair procedure, and then explain that to, if my client's coming from out of town and they were counting on seeing the property, they may not have that ability. But it definitely makes our offer stronger.
And like you said, you might be able to do, and again, depends on the listing agent you're dealing with. They might see due diligence as something they're not going to entertain, because you can obviously walk, which I understand, because you may only get one bite at that multiple offer apple. But you might be able to include what Lauren knows a lot of sellers want to see, which is as is, and preserve a termination right with a short due diligence period, and say buyer agrees to accept the house as is, but they're still preserving that termination right if the seller will accept a short due diligence, even with as is language.
Exactly. I a lot of times will suggest to my buyer to increase their earnest money. If it's a conventional loan and the house is on a slab and there's a termite bond, maybe we remove the CO 100. Basically, and then it comes down to their financing. I mean, if it looks like what we're offering, there may be an issue with the appraisal. I have that conversation and let them know, we could offer this, but if it doesn't appraise, this is going to be the situation. And then communication, obviously, with the listing agent. And then another thing that I've been doing and I've had some success with is having the buyer's lender call the listing agent. And that has, I think, pushed us to the front a time or two.
Absolutely. Tell me what you're doing on earnest money. What have you what have you seen?
If if we submit an offer with a normal amount of earnest money and then I find out that there's multiple offers, then I'll go back to my buyer and suggest that be one of the things that we do to strengthen our offer a little bit, and then explain, a lot of people don't understand what exactly earnest money is and are they going to get that back. So just explain that to them and explain that, if they end up buying the house, ultimately it's a credit towards the purchase price. Yeah.
Yeah, I know this isn't deal or no deal, and there's still the realities of the world, but I saw someone with a cash offer on a $250,000 townhome with multiple offers, and they put $250,000 as earnest money. And it's not the same as $250,000 in a suitcase that you opened up in front of the seller. But if it was already a cash offer and they've got the cash, at least it gave the seller something to walk away from. And that listing agent said that buyer was not the highest offer, but it was cash, and they put that cash money where their mouth was. Now, doesn't mean you've got to do that, but if you're buying a $500,000 house with 20% down, that means your down payment's $100,000. What sends a stronger message, $5,000 earnest money or 50? When you're putting 100 down, sometimes those things can matter. And the truth is 50 doesn't cost you anything if the contract doesn't get ratified. So some people are putting higher in the price where it actually costs money, where if you've really got that cash sitting in the bank and you're going to be using it as the down payment, higher earnest money might get more attention. Haley, any other terms you're focusing on? And Haley, I'd also like to hear how you're dealing with appraisal issues, because I know those are on everybody's mind.
So one of the biggest things that I like to focus on when getting these offers together is, helping my buyer understand that lower risk is going to be important to the seller. I also make sure that I'm calling the list agent and I'm finding out what's important to them. I know a few of you have already said that, but why? Because recently I just had a buyer who the list agent said 45 days close because they were looking to buy another home and she was a little bit older. Well, my client couldn't close until July 15th, but when I put that into the offer, and we were already in multiple offers, so I was a little concerned going in that way. However, I called the list agent and I explained all of the benefits of her not having to rush in and try to buy something that she might not like. It bought her time, which, even though this offer I don't think was the highest offer, it bought her something that couldn't be bought with money otherwise. It bought her, calmness around her being able to timely move out. And even though she thought she wanted a 45-day close after talking to her agent, it was easier on my buyer, and they looked like the least risk, the easiest buyers to work with. Another thing that you want to know low risk is if your buyers are financing, going through the list agent, explaining to them, how good the lender is that you're with. That is key. Having the lender email the list agent, verifying everything about your buyer, that they're a strong buyer. And then also creating a confidence in yourself, because the list agent, especially if you haven't worked with them before, they might not know you. So don't be afraid to, explain to them, hey, we have a repair procedure, but this is our expectation. This is the expectation for timeline. This is expectation for everything. And, my buyer is ready to go. They're going to be easy to work with. I've been creative in some of the offers. I've encouraged my buyers to do that. So paying for things like deed stamps as opposed to a higher offer, because the seller will be netting the same, but if the appraisal comes in low, it's still more money in the seller's pocket. And
So let me stop you for 1 second, Haley, so everybody doesn't miss that point. When Haley's talking about paying for deed stamps, I know this is crazy because it's not in the contract of the body itself. She's talking about, instead of the buyer asking for closing costs, the buyer offering the seller closing costs. So the buyer offering to pay up to X dollars of seller's closing costs. And that may get you more bang for your buck than the offer to pay, maybe you say buyer to pay seller's deed stamps up to X. So you still have that dollar in there, so you see what they're paying. But that does, as Haley was saying, increases the seller's net without building it into that appraisal price if you're going to have an appraisal shortage. So, it's cash the buyer's got to bring to closing, understood. But again, buyer paying seller's closing costs is not something I'd seen in my entire career until about 3 months ago. So I think that's a great point, Haley. Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off, but I didn't want that point to get missed when you talked about paying deed stamps, because I think that was a critical point.
So and there's multiple things you can do with that, but I found that it lowers the risk, and the lower the risk, as long as you've made it known to the seller that there is a lower risk, it will benefit your client. Now, let me see. So on appraisal, I know you'd asked me about that, and that's a good point because we've been seeing a lot of issues with that. Now, I have a conversation on the front end with my buyers about, appraisals, and I explain to them that an appraisal is merely an opinion of value. And I show them some of the stats to see where the market's going, so they fully understand what that means. Now, when we're in a multiple offer, something that a lot of list agents and sellers come back to ask is, well, will your seller waive the appraisal? Some of them you can't waive the appraisal, but the buyer can choose to gap that. So you can, for some loans it's required to have one, but telling the list agent or writing into the contract that the buyer will pay, say a house was listed at 300 and multiple offers, you're agreeing to pay 315, well, it only comes in at 305. Having that guarantee that your buyer will come up with that extra money, and make sure that your buyer fully knows and is aware that it actually could happen. make sure they're okay with that and they have the funds to do so. But that is something that can strengthen your offer. So when it comes to appraisal, that is, definitely something to consider. You want to talk to your buyers about that. And it doesn't have to be the full amount, but, recently I just did, they'll fill a gap up to $7,000. And then my buyers even said that, well, if it does appraise, they'll still give that $7,000 to the seller. So it may not have been the highest offer. However, that little bit of risk of if they were confident enough it was going to appraise at this amount, the sellers could walk away with extra money. So that creative, those different things will really make your offer stand out.
Yeah, Chris Haviland said you're not necessarily waiving the appraisal, you're just waiving the appraisal contingency. You're waiving the ability to terminate if it does not appraise, still getting it appraised, but that way you have the right to bring that money to the table. As we're running out of time, I want to cover a few extra things, so maybe run just a few minutes over, but Yasser, anything on appraisal or earnest money or terms or anything you want to add that you've seen contract-wise?
In regard to earnest money right now, I would say, the more you can put, the stronger the offer is going to look, depending on what the buyer can afford ultimately, that they feel comfortably putting down on that property for, 30, 45 days, 60 days, and not having that in their bank account to count on. That's really the biggest thing with earnest money for me. Appraisal wise, once again, depends on what the buyer can afford. Right now with appraisals, I'm putting usually a contingency between $5,000 to $10,000, depending on what the buyer feels comfortable with and what they can afford, once again, to give that seller less risk and hopefully more reward at the end of the day and get them to the closing table. Piggybacking on what Haley said, appraisal at the end of the day is an opinion of price. So, hey, the seller can either accept it, they can decline it, whatever it may be. But ultimately, at that time, the buyer has that decision, hey, I'm okay moving forward, paying $5,000, or if it's more than that, backing away from the deal and still making an educated decision, hopefully.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And I certainly don't think we're going to see, 15% price appreciation year over year on an ongoing basis. But it is amazing right now that houses are basically market wide appreciating at a little over 1% per month. So the way we're headed right now, that $300,000 house is worth $303,000 30 days from now before you've closed. So I think we need to at least have those conversations. Again, we never want people to overpay, but if you're talking $3,000 to $9,000 on a $300,000 house, again, if they have the down payment and if it can appraise and they can get the financing and it works inside their budget, you could make up that appreciation right now in a quarter. I mean, even once we go to 3% a year, you'd make that up in the first year. And again, if you're focused on the why and they're living there, then that $3,000 to $9,000 shouldn't stand in their way really of getting a house at the end of the day. I understand nobody wants to pay any more than they need to, but this is different than buying a roll of paper towels, or me buying a individual bottle of water for $2 at the gas station when I can get 24 of them outside, even if I have to drink it hot for $4, because that just eats me up inside. Lauren, anything on the offer side that you want to mention? I was going to ask you, Lauren, have you ever seen, which I thought was something new to me, a seller countering with a home purchase contingency? So we used to get buyers presenting a home sale contingency because they don't want to buy your house until they've sold theirs. Now I've seen for the first time a seller countering a purchaser with a home purchase contingency, which is I don't have to sell you my house unless I find one that I can buy and move to. Have you seen that one yet, Lauren?
So I haven't seen it in this market, but years ago in Maryland, when the market was hot, we used to do that all the time. But it was a very different market because there were a little more houses available. I think it's hard now because there's nothing available. So, I mean, a buyer still wants to have an idea of when they're going to move into that house.
Well, and you're right. It works for buyers that have that flexibility. And, and again, now you also think of the cascading series of, well, I'm selling, but I'm not sure I'm moving until somebody, but it is interesting, especially, and Babette had the comment, and I will send that out to everybody because it is not a standard SCAR form that I'm aware of. If you have a seller that says, I really would list, but I don't have anywhere to go, I'd rather see it if that helped free up a potential listing than not use it at all. But of course, the more contingencies we have, the more dominoes get into place, and it starts to get, even trickier.
I did have a transaction of about a month ago with a Carolina One agent, and it was an off-market property, and we did structure it so that the buyer had, or the seller had time to find something. And we structured the rent back. I mean, we allowed them to rent back. I mean, there were a lot of moving parts, but I think ultimately it was, everybody working together to try to make it a win-win, and it did work out. But it was, okay, we'll settle on this date. We'll rent back to you at this point. But if you find a house before then, we'll let you out, and this will be the cost. And if it takes you longer, this will be the cost. It was kind of nuts, but it worked very well.
It always amazes me that we've got the experience of Yasser and Haley and Peter and Lauren and all of the transactions that you guys have been involved in, and all the information that you've been able to share with everybody. And it's still, at the end of the day, in its most basic form, boils down to start with the why for both your buyer and the house you're buying, and work really hard and put the customer first to find out how we put a deal together that works for everybody, and address all of those individual concerns. Like Haley said, set the expectation, address what you can up front, whether it's appraisal, eliminate risk for the seller by adjusting those terms that you can. All of those things still boil down. Now, I appreciate the panel discussion on the technicalities as to how to do some of it and some of the different ideas and the earnest money and other things, but really still boils down to how do we do some of those basic things of putting people first and serving their needs and finding out a way to make it happen, which is truly amazing in everything we do. I want to thank the panel. You guys were able to share, and I appreciate you taking the time, especially in today's market, to share just a few ideas and thoughts. So maybe some of the 300 agents that were on the call with us today approach it just a little bit different. Look at that as a little bit, what, Haley, you're right. Instead of waiting for tomorrow for that showing, I need to go show it today and let's do it on video. Because if I wait a day, that listing's gone. Or I need to make sure I talk to that listing agent ahead of time to figure out what's really more important and how can I give those sellers the greatest comfort level, even more so than maybe just the highest price that I thought about. So we've got lots of great comments in the chat box about each of you guys and all that you're willing to share with our agents. So I thank you. Obviously, when you talk to people later, or if you missed a couple things, this has been recorded. So we'll be on C1 Rose so that everybody can watch it, and we'll send it out to everybody. Appreciate you guys sticking with us. It's about 7 minutes after, so want to respect your guys' time because I know you're busy, but appreciate being in business with all of you and your willingness to share and benefit your fellow agents, which is one of the reasons why you guys are growing at nearly 50% more than the market, because you're really delivering that bit extra to your buyers and sellers on a day in and day out basis. So thank you very much for everybody being here. I'll see everybody in 2 weeks for our next town hall. We'll put out some more information about that shortly. And I hope everybody has a great rest of the week. So thank you again for being here. Thank you for all our panelists. Very much appreciate it, and hope to see everybody soon. Thank you, Yasser, Haley, Peter, and Lauren.
Thanks,
guys.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Good to see everybody.